Grand Theft Auto. What more can I say about this iconic game series aside from everything? Starting off in the late 90s as a simple top-down cops and robbers game, then slowly advancing to become the money-printing machine it is today. A lot of people seem to forget just how massive this series has become, garnering Rockstar Games billions of dollars, and making a name for themselves as one of the greatest game studios out there. The success of GTA is quite incredible, with GTA 6 being one of the most hyped entertainment products of all time. Now, as you can imagine, a lot of studios will look at Rockstar's success and get a bit jealous. And who wouldn't? So some game studios try to capture the spark Rockstar had with GTA by making their own attempt at a 3D open world game. And most of the time, these games would just be very poor imitations or even blatant rip-offs of the GTA series. What the fuck? And they would quickly become forgotten within the sands of time. Although a few of these inspirations would actually garner some form of success and even build up their own style. And that's exactly what I want to discuss in this video. I picked 3 games that were heavily inspired by GTA and see if they're good enough to stand on their own 2 legs. Now, if I were to talk about all the games inspired by GTA, we would be here all day. So I picked the games that I believe are worth discussing, so grab your Glock, steal the best car you can find, and let's go for a joyride with... Now, Driver is a very interesting case here as it's not technically a clone of GTA, but more so an advancement of GTA. Let me explain. So back in 1997, DMA Design released the first Grand Theft Auto game. It was a simple arcade-style driving and shooting game, which is played from a top-down view. While players enjoyed the open world freedom, the controls were very clunky and the top-down camera view was not that well liked. The developers had to use a 2D camera view due to technical limitations, and also claimed that they wanted to replicate the overhead helicopter chase footage you'd see on TV.
And watching all that overhead helicopter chase footage, which was the only camera we could use due to the limitations on the old hardware.
Now that's called working with your limitations. But 2 years later in 1999, Ubisoft Reflections released a video game, Driver. You are the wheelman. The game is inspired by all those car chase movies and followed a simple story of an undercover cop named John Tanner exploring the criminal underworld of America. In the game, we get to explore 4 photorealistic cities: Miami, San Francisco, Los Angeles, and New York. Now, one aspect about Driver that you would notice right away is that the game is in 3D, as opposed to GTA 1's 2D camera view. Driver has a similar gameplay aspect to GTA where you drive around different cities doing random missions, but Driver takes what the first GTA game did and made it better. The cutscenes were more advanced, having limited but impressive 3D animation that really immersed players into the story. It was way better than GTA's interesting looking cutscenes. When Driver was released, it was an instant success, selling over 1 million units within its release. The game, no doubt, pushed the PS1 to its limit, and it offered an incredible experience that players could just not get in GTA. GTA 2 was released around the same time as Driver, and while it was a step up from the original game with better controls and an impressive respect meter, it was still stuck in a top-down view, so most players just went with Driver because it looked better. And after playing the game myself, while it is certainly outdated, I can easily see why gamers fell in love with Driver. It's truly incredible how they were able to fit all this content onto a single PS1 disc. Although while playing the game, I can imagine how the PlayStation was struggling not to blow up while running the game. But for what it is, it's a very fun and impressive 3D driving game. Then cut to a year later in 2000, where Ubisoft Reflections decided to push themselves even further with Driver 2. Not only do we get a new story, new locations like Chicago, Havana, Cuba, Las Vegas, and Rio de Janeiro, but we were also given the ability to get out of our car and walk around. Everything about this game was an improvement, with even better CGI cutscenes. So with all the advancements and improvements from the first game, you would think that this game would be a surefire hit, right? Well, not really. Upon release, Driver 2 was quite negatively received. IGN called Driver 2 the biggest disappointment of the year, with the main complaints being how clunky and broken the game felt. Like, the developers were really cramming this game onto a PS1, but maybe they bit off more than they could chew. The PS1 was a very weak console, and they tried to shove too much content into this game. So what should have been an ambitious follow-up to a beloved game ends up being a big disappointment. It didn't help that a year later, Rockstar would go on to release Grand Theft Auto 3, a big milestone in gaming for being one of the first games to properly give players a living, breathing world that you could explore and do whatever you want in. Driver 2 felt empty and broken, while GTA 3 felt more alive and polished. It didn't help matters that the GTA series started to make fun of the Driver series. In GTA 3 there's a mission called Two-Face Tanner, where you have to chase down an undercover cop named Tanner, and they gave poor old Tanner a female running animation just to mock how Tanner ran in Driver 2. Yikes. Later on in 2004, Ubisoft released Driver 3, a very poor sequel that was clearly inspired by Vice City. The game takes place in Miami, as well as Nice and Istanbul. But while Vice City had so much personality with all the neon lights, characters and banging soundtrack, Driver's Miami felt bland with no life or personality in it. They did try to make fun of GTA by having this Timmy Vermiceni character who had chunky hands and wore floaties, but it just seemed like a very pathetic comeback. Later down the line we got Driver Parallel Lines and Driver San Francisco, which were both fairly well received, with the later game being praised by fans. But sadly, the Driver series got overshadowed by the GTA series' ever-growing success, and it would soon fall into obscurity. It's a shame really, the series does have its fans and it does seem to get praised a lot of the time, and I can easily see the appeal, but they tried too hard to compete with GTA and just ended up failing. But the game series does have a good legacy, so it's not all bad. Anyway, let's drive on over to the next game, shall we? Good old Saints Row. Boy, what an interesting game series. So much to say, yet so little time. Anyways, the first Saints Row was published in 2006 for the Xbox 360 by a company called Volition. The game takes place in Stillwater, a parody of the ever so beautiful Detroit.
Michael, don't leave me here!
The game's focus on gang lives, kinda like San Andreas, but way more over the top. Now, while it's kinda hard to call Driver a clone of GTA since it's more so just an improvement on GTA's concept, Saints Row is clearly inspired by GTA. It began development back in 2003, right after the release of GTA 3 and Vice City, so they definitely saw the success of those games and thought, hey, we can do that, but how about we make it more insane? And that's exactly what they did with Saints Row. But let's go into the games deeper, shall we? Like I said, the game focuses on gang lives and criminal syndicates, but while San Andreas opted to depict gang life in a more realistic way, Saints Row does it in a more comedic way, and that is not a complaint at all, by the way. These games can be batshit insane with their worlds, characters and stories that it's borderline hilarious. But how does Saints Row work as an open world game, I hear you ask? Well, very nicely. The sandbox world is fairly impressive for its time, with so much personality and charm. The world has a sort of dystopian futuristic style to it, while also not going too far with that style, if you get what I mean. It's got a unique feel to it that you don't see in many other games. The character customization is kinda standard in the first game, but still pretty cool. But I was easily most impressed with the gameplay. The game has got some amazing destruction mechanics and some hilarious ragdoll physics. And with the driving mechanics, they thankfully went with the more arcadey style controls, which I have always preferred. The first Saints Row game was a huge success, and thus it got a sequel made 2 years later. A game that is not only a fantastic sequel, but one of my all-time favorite games out there. The first thing I noticed with this game was just how next level the character customization is. Not only can you pick from so many styles and looks, but also 8 different voices ranging from male, female, and even British. With most games, when you get to customize a character, they will almost always be mute. But the fact that they went the extra mile and recorded 8 different actors for the main protagonist is beyond impressive. And Saints Row 2 is way more over the top and even more cartoony in many places, which is a great contrast when compared to games that try to be more grounded, realistic, and serious. Grand Theft Auto 4 released in the same year as Saints Row 2, and that game aimed to be more mature, dark, and realistic. And while a lot of people like that kind of style, I am not a big fan of it. In fact, my opinions on GTA 4 are complicated, but that's a whole other discussion for a whole other day. While they were advertising Saints Row 2, they made these ads where they mocked GTA 4 with how boring and realistic it is, compared to how fun and weird Saints Row 2 is. See, driver? This is how you make fun of a rival game. Although, GTA 4 did sell over 25 million copies, while Saints Row 2 only sold a whopping 3 million copies. Good attempt guys, you tried. But aside from that, Saints Row proved to be a very successful game series, producing 3 more very popular games over the next few years, and eventually getting a full reboot in 2022 with a game simply called Saints Row. So yeah, Saints Row did get a lot of glory, with some gamers arguing that it's even better than the GTA series. And while I do love Saints Row 2, I'm kind of biased towards GTA, what can I say? But in the end, Saints Row proved to be pretty damn good. Hopefully the next game on this list will be just as good, right? Right? Watchdogs. Oh dear sweet Watchdogs, how I cannot wait to make fun of you. Okay, so first a little history lesson, and a fun fact. The first Watch Dogs game is actually derived from the Driver series. Yeah, while Driver San Francisco was in development, Watch Dogs was initially planned to be a sequel to that game. But San Francisco was a big flop, and the Driver series was cancelled. So they reworked the original idea of an open world driving game, and developed it to be more of a hacking game with some driving elements. Still heavily inspired by GTA of course, but it does have its own gameplay style that makes it kinda different. The game released in 2014 to some great reviews and 10 million copies sold. Now, I like to be a reasonably nice guy all the time, but sometimes I like being an asshole. And I'll be honest, Watch Dogs is a very poor attempt at capturing open world gaming. But what's the game about, I hear you asking? Well, we play as a vigilante named Aiden Pierce, who is on a quest for revenge after his niece is killed. Very original, right? Now, like I said, the game heavily focuses on its hacking element, rather than the open world gameplay, and I will admit the hacking side to it is very interesting. It's cool how certain missions require different ways of hacking to complete them. Even the ability to turn off traffic lights is a nice little detail, although some of the hacking elements could get rather confusing, but that could just be me. I get confused very easily at games. But one thing that I will say is that the controls here are an absolute mess. I played this on Xbox One and I deadass wanted to grab my controller and just throw it away in a fit of anger, I hated the controls. It was painful trying to get used to the controls in this game. I know some of y'all are saying, why not change the control options? Which, first of all, I did try that and it did nothing. And secondly, a game shouldn't need me to change the control options. They should work perfectly fine on default. And the driving, oh my god, the driving. The driving mechanics are so poor and frustrating. It's like they got the realistic driving from GTA 4 and the arcade style driving from Saints Row and combined them together. There was no weight to the vehicles whatsoever. It felt clunky and broken. But what about the open world design here? This game takes place in a city inspired by Chicago and the metropolitan area. Now, while a city inspired by Chicago could be great, the entire map is just kinda bland. Like, there's next to nothing special about this map in the game. It just feels like a bland, generic American city that I've seen in every game and movie before. When you look at the GTA games, every city and location has a certain charm to them that really brought them to life. You have the ugly green smog in Liberty City, the 80s neon lights in Vice City, or the warm orange tint skies in San Andreas. But this map might as well be called feckin' Townsville or something. But what happened to Watch Dogs after it was released? Well, we got a sequel 2 years later in 2016, which is apparently way better, but I sadly wasn't able to play it. Mainly because... I ain't paying that, sorry. Then 4 years later in 2020, we got Watch Dogs Legion, taking place in this weird area called London, and sadly the game got fairly mixed reviews, thus ending this trilogy on a lackluster note, with no plans for any more games. But there's a Watch Dogs movie coming out soon, so yay, it's not all bad. Maybe I'll check it out, but my stance on the game series is that it clearly tried to be its own thing, but to me it just kinda failed. But sure, that happens. Now, of course, there are still so many games to talk about. The Mafia games, Just Cause, Scarface, The Godfather, and even the feckin' Simpsons Hit and Run. But because I'm a lazy bastard, I couldn't be bothered to talk about all of them. But tell you what, if this video does well and you guys want to see a washed up Irish lad talk about GTA clones, then god damn it, I will do so. But for real though, while these games may have the unfortunate luck of being known as GTA clones, I think there is something interesting seeing all of them, regardless of my opinion. I know that these games have massive fans who clearly find so much enjoyment in these games, and that's great. If anything, I think it's commendable how they went out to try and capture the magic of the GTA series in their own unique ways. And whatever you guys think of them, they are way better than those blatant GTA ripoffs you see in the App Store. And who knows, maybe I'll talk about them in the future. But for now, that has been all for me today. Hope you guys enjoyed this video and hope you stick around for more wacky videos. This has been Zach, and I'll see you guys in the next video. See ya.